Our next candidate is the Libertarian candidate for governor of Iowa. He is currently Associate Professor of Neuroscience and Psychology at Iowa State University, where he's worked for 16 years, so obviously an education background there, and a Cyclone, so yay, go Cyclones. He ran for the Iowa legislature from Ames as a Libertarian 5 times, and currently serves as Vice Chairman of the Libertarian Party of Iowa. And to prepare for his governor's run, this is really amazing. He lost 144 pounds since July 1st. So, I think I have to say he's got Jonathan Narcissus beat on the weight loss. So let's welcome Eric Cooper.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. And yeah, on my website, if you go there, it tells you how I lost all the weight if you want to figure out how to do it yourself. Well, I'm very proud to be a member of Iowans for Tax Relief, and as you can imagine, extremely grateful that you invited me here today. You know, the American Revolution was fought because our citizens objected to taxation without representation. Our current government's piled up so much debt that children who haven't even been born yet are going to be taxed their entire lives paying off the debts that we've created. Now that's taxation without representation in its purest form. And no person of good conscience can think it's right. Okay? I think that anybody who honestly looks at our current situation is going to come to exactly the same conclusion that I did. And that is, if we're going to ever dig ourselves out of the hole the government's created for us, the government has to get very much smaller, very quickly. Now, what I want us to consider is a return to the Jeffersonian notion of small, limited government. In other words, the libertarian notion of what the government should be. It's the notion that made us the greatest nation in the world, the greatest creditor nation rather than the greatest debtor nation, and made us a beacon of freedom to people all over the world. What Jefferson pointed out was, the government in a society is the institution that's allowed to use force, physical violence. There are certain activities that require force, and the reason why we need a government is in order to perform those activities. The activities that would require force include, first, protecting people from body crimes like murder and rape and assault. Second, we need force to protect people from property crimes like theft and vandalism and fraud and pollution. Third, we need the government to enforce the terms of contracts when there's a dispute. That requires force. And then fourth, there are certain economic goods known as public goods that the market for one reason or another can't provide, and we need the government to provide those too. That also requires force. But very little else does require force. And having the government perform any activities other than the limited set that require force is foolish, because the government's a monopoly. And like all monopolies, it has very little incentive to please its customers and very little incentive to be cost effective. When we give more and more responsibility to the government, we are giving more and more responsibility to the least efficient institution in our society. So what I'm advocating is a return to a sort of government that was limited to the activities that require force. Now, it is going to have to collect some tax money in order to provide those activities. But when it collects those taxes, they need to be taxes that don't distort the market. And I think if we had a real limited government, we probably could get by with just having a small sales tax with maybe food, clothing, and shelter exempted. And if that is insufficient, then maybe a flat income tax that doesn't penalize productivity. But that's all we need. Now look, I'm not going to be elected the governor of Iowa. I am a third-party candidate, and as such, I don't have the money to compete with the Republicans and Democrats. Okay? My goals are two in this election. Number one, I want to start a real dialogue with my fellow Iowans about the notion of smaller government, a dialogue that I think the major parties have been very reluctant to have. The second thing I want to do, the second thing I want to do is I need to get 2% of the vote. The reason I need to get 2% of the vote is, under Iowa law, the Libertarian Party can gain major party status if our governor candidate can get 2% of the vote. And what that means is, with major party status, we're playing by the same rules as the Republicans and Democrats, and we can run lots and lots of candidates the next election cycle. The goal of Libertarian candidates is not to win elections. The goal of our candidates is to get 10% of the vote on a regular basis. 10% is enough to decide the election between the Republican and the Democrat. And if we can get 10% on a regular basis, it forces the major parties to start stealing our issues in order to poach our voters. And I would say, anybody who wants to steal my issues, take them. They're yours. Right? This has been done in American history. The populists did it in the 1890s. The socialists did it in the 19-teens. They got everything they wanted without winning elections, and we can do it too. What I would say to you is, come late November, I think you're going to find the Republican candidate is going to have a huge lead in this election. I mean, I think it could be as big as 7%. And if it's that big, what I want you to consider is, I think you can do more for the cause of smaller government by helping me get the 2% I need than adding one more vote on to the major party candidates' total. Now, my very favorite question to be asked when I'm on the campaign trail is, what can we do to get people to come to Iowa? And here's what I say. You know, once upon a time, Iowa had the greatest immigration campaign in the history of the world. It was a word-of-mouth campaign that took place about 1850, 1860 in the beer halls of Munich and Bavaria. And it went like this. Have you heard about Iowa? It's in America. They don't care where you're from. They don't care what language you speak. You get to keep 96% of what you earn, 4% taxes. And you get to live your life however you want. And when people heard about this, they said, "That's so great. I want to live there." And they did come here in droves. And when they heard about this, they put the motto of our state on our flag to remind us of why they came here. Citizens of Iowa, do you know those words? The motto of our state? Our liberties we prize, and our rights we will maintain. Yes, that's the motto of our state. They put that on our flag to remind us, the future citizens of Iowa, that liberty and freedom is the reason they came to America, and I know there are some people in this room who've not forgotten that. Thank you very much.
And economical with words, you had 34 seconds left.